Here's the thing, you don't want to show up to your next video shoot and your GH7 is not ready to go. So here's all the settings that I use to have the most cinematic video experience with the GH7. And this is something where you can just go through, copy all these settings, and then the next time you go to your video shoot, your GH7 is going to be ready to roll. And on this channel, I want to help you master your LUMIX cameras. If that's something you're interested in, make sure you hit that subscribe button. So the GH7 really is a powerhouse of a camera. It's really a cinema camera in a hybrid camera body. So this video is only about video settings on the GH7, not photography settings. So with that being said, we're gonna jump into the menu. So the very first thing you're gonna wanna do when you're in the menu is set this exposure mode to manual. You'll have all these different options, you know, shutter priority, aperture priority, but we're gonna go with manual. So the very next thing that we're gonna do is actually go down here to SS gain operation, and we're gonna make sure that this is set on angle. And what this is going to do is this is going to set your shutter speed actually to a shutter angle. So it's going to make it 180. And what that means is that whatever frame rate you're shooting at, whether it's 60p, 24p, 30p, that your shutter speed is always going to be double whatever your frame rate is. And that's a good rule of thumb when you're shooting video on these hybrid cameras. The nice thing about LUMIX cameras is that they come with this shutter angle, so you can set it, you can leave it, and you don't have to mess with it, and it's perfect for a lot of run and gun situations if you're switching frame rates pretty often. One other thing that we're going to do right off the bat is we're actually going to go down here to system frequency, and it's the wrench and like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th option under here, system frequency. And you have a few different options. If you're in Europe or really any other place in the world other than the US, you might go to this 50 Hertz option. I keep mine in the 60 Hertz options, this 59.94 option, and that's NTSC. So that's going to give me, you know, the best playback and everything for here in the US, especially if I'm, you know, shooting for television and things like that. The other option is the 24 Hertz cinema mode. You are going to lose some different frame rates if you go to that cinema mode, but a lot of people like that straight 24 frames per second. If you're doing a lot of like narrative work and you're doing a lot of, you know, maybe short films or even long form films, you might want to start shooting in that 24 Hertz, that cinema mode. However, for the work that I do and a lot of, you know, this type of stuff, YouTube type of stuff, I keep it in that NTSC because I'm here in the US. And that's going to give me pretty much all of the shoot options that I need. So we're going to go back up to this very first option in the menu, back to, you know, the camera, the video mode camera. And we're going to go to photo style, and this is where you're going to find all of your different color profiles. Now with the GH7, you have Vlog built in to the camera. It's the full Vlog on the GH5. If you're coming from a GH5, the GH5 has a light version that you have to purchase separately. It doesn't come in the GH5, you have to purchase it separately. But that's a light version. That's not a full S-curve. The Vlog in the GH7 is the full Vlog profile. And to get the most dynamic range on your GH7, you're going to want to use this Vlog color profile. Now, you can shuffle through a lot of these other profiles. If you like shooting in, you know, Cine like D, it's there. Nice thing about this GH7 as well is it comes with the Leica monochrome, which was introduced on the G9 II. It's actually a Leica sanctioned, you know, black and white color profile, and it is gorgeous. Gorgeous. I highly suggest you experiment with that and play around with it. Some other monochrome profiles, you have the regular photography profiles like portrait, landscape. You have a flat profile, some of the natural, which I, you know, used a lot on the GH5. I use the natural color profile quite a bit. I don't use it on some of these newer LUMIX cameras. You have vivid, and then you have the standard color profile. One great thing though about this GH7 is that you have the option to purchase ARRI Log C3. Now, if you are shooting for, you know, a bunch of other commercial projects and you get hired on as kind of a crash cam or a C cam type shooter, having this ARRI Log C3 option on the GH7, yes, it's a separate purchase, but it's a great option for some bigger projects. Now, you might purchase a GH7 just for that reason if you're in a bigger area and a lot of, commercial projects or, film sets that are using ARRI cameras. The other option in the color profiles is the real-time LUT, where you can go in and you can actually set your real-time LUT. Let's say you have, you go download my free LUTs. Okay, download that free packet. It's down in the description. Go do that. You can take those free LUTs and upload them to your LUT library. Then you can shoot with those LUTs baked into your image. So you don't have to do any color conversion in post. It's a quick turnaround feature that is available on the GH7, real-time LUT. So let's say you go and download my LUT packet. You just go into this gear here, LUT library, and this is where you can upload those LUTs. You just hit the set 7 and then you can hit that load button. You put that LUT onto an SD card. It'll automatically register that LUT is available on that SD card, and you can load it right here onto your LUT library and then start shooting with the real-time LUT option. All right, we're gonna continue going through the menu, and then we're gonna get to the file format. I like shooting in the MOV file format. However, if you are working on some other projects that require, Apple ProRes, you can record Apple ProRes. You can record Apple ProRes RAW internally onto the GH7. However, that will require some hefty storage options that you might want to consider for the GH7, like an external, SSD through USB-C if you want to record that way, or you might have to purchase a very large CF Express card, which can, kind of add up. So an SSD might be the better option if you want to record Apple ProRes. A lot of the work I'm doing, I'm just recording in MOV. And this is where we get to some of the record quality settings. And again, the GH7 is absolutely loaded with record settings. I mean, check out all of this that you can record with. I mean, full HD up to 240, and then you have 4K 120, Cinema 4K 120, no crop on the image because it's a Micro Four Thirds system. But then you record all the way up to an open gate 5.8K, 6K, 24p or 30p, and that's a 420 10-bit option. It's a long GOP. You won't have as much control as something that might be like a Cinema 4K, a 422 10-bit all-I option at 800 megabits per second. So it really depends on the project that you're shooting for. If you're shooting for social media, you probably don't need to shoot in some of these higher settings, but if you're shooting commercial work or documentary work, you'll want to have a lot of control over that color, and that's where some of these other options like all-I, 422 10-bit come in. However, the nice thing if you are shooting in some of those higher bit rates, you do have the proxy record settings that you can use. Now, one of the new features on the GH7 that was introduced on the G9 II is actually that hybrid phase autofocus. It's so great to have autofocus in a system like this. It should have been on the GH6, but it is now on the GH7. You can go into the focus settings, and one of the things that you're going to want to do is kind of explore these different type of, detecting subjects. Human is something that I pretty much always keep it on. However, it does have animal, car, motorcycle, train, and airplane settings. If you are filming a lot of those different scenarios, you do have those different options. Now, one of the things that you're going to want to do is put that continuous autofocus on mode 2, and that just means that that continuous autofocus works all of the time. And so that's the video feature that you're going to want to have for that autofocus. I usually keep my autofocus peaking on, and you can set it, set the sensitivity, depending on where you're at. Now, this is mostly going to be for manual focus, but I like having it on because sometimes I need to pop the autofocus off, especially, if I'm on doing some B-roll or something like that. So the areas that are in focus, they're gonna be lit up on whatever color that you pick here. Now with some of the sound recording, I usually adjust my gain level to either -12 or -18, depending on the situation that I'm in. But other than that, I really don't mess with the audio settings a whole lot. I just kind of keep everything as is. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next menu item. And again, I already showed you the LUT library. That's where you upload your custom LUT. But then the next thing we're gonna do is actually set these ISO increments to 1/3. And that's just gonna give you a little bit more control if you are adjusting the ISO settings. Now, the base ISO on the GH7 is 500. So if you're shooting in vlog, the lowest that you're gonna be able to go, unless you turn on the extended ISO, the lowest that you're gonna be able to go is 500. The GH7 is not a dual native ISO camera. It actually has a dynamic range boost mode built into the camera, which is supposed to extend that dynamic range just a little bit. Now, if you're familiar with the GH6, the dynamic range boost mode was a toggle on, toggle off, and it set the base ISO, if you turned it on, it set the base ISO to 2000, which was a super hot image and kind of hard to control. I never used it on the GH6. However, on the GH7, that dynamic range boost mode is on all the time throughout all the ISO increments. So I set the ISO increments to 1/3, and that's just gonna allow me to kind of fine tune that ISO. Rather than jumping from 500 to 600, it's gonna give me a few options in between those. So I'm gonna shuffle down to the next setting that I usually turn off, is the manual focus assist. Now, if you are manual focusing and you turn just a little bit, turn the focus ring, it's gonna punch in on this back screen. I like turning that off just because sometimes it can be a little bit of a distraction, more annoying than anything. Now, if you really need to fine tune that focus, you might want to keep that on, especially if you do, you know, some macro stuff, or if you are doing some B-roll of some products, you might, you know, want to have that punch in just so you have that ability to see where you're actually focused. I turn it off because it's actually kind of annoying and I don't necessarily like it. But a lot of these other settings I just kind of leave as is until I get down to some of these, you know, monitor display settings. I usually turn my photo grid line on for a rule of thirds. I missed the histogram. If you want to quick look at your exposure, turn the histogram on, and you know, it kind of gives you that wave in that little box, and you know, this thing right down here, and it'll give you like a quick look at your exposure. It's not necessarily something that you want to trust all the time, just because it kind of takes everything that's in the image and gives you that readout. The better option would actually be this luminance spot meter, which I have on all the time. And what this does is this is going to give you a readout of different areas of your image that you know whether you're exposed. Usually if you're in vlog, if it's this number down here is 00, that stop range, that means you are exposed properly. If you are using a gray card, that gray card will be exposed properly if it's at 00. So whatever light source you're using, whatever light system you're using, if that gray card is 00, that usually means that you are exposed correctly for that scene. But honestly, a lot of it's going to depend on the type of scene that you're setting, the image that you want, the look that you want, the creative look that you want. A lot of that lighting is going to kind of determine that. The next thing that I'm going to go down to is this log view assist. So what you can do is, let's say you're shooting in vlog, you can actually monitor it in any of the LUTs that you have on here, really, you know, maybe some of the LUTs that you uploaded, or you can just use the regular Panasonic Vlog to Rec 709 convert LUT, and that's just going to help you monitor that vlog image a little bit so you're not looking at a totally flat image. So if you're shooting for different aspect ratios in editing, you can actually set these frame markers on your screen. I'm going to go down here, I'm just going to do this vertical one. This one's easy to see, a 9:16. Let's say I want to shoot for vertical, but I want to, you know, not actually turn the camera. I can shoot, especially in open gate settings, I can set this frame marker up, and that's gonna give me a outline. Let me turn it on there. That's gonna give me an outline that I can kind of make sure everything's framed up in that image. It's perfect for any type of open gate shooting, you know, that 5.8K open gate shooting. I use that a lot because, you know, you want to make sure you have things framed up correctly for that vertical image. Another great exposure tool is the waveform. And so again, with the gray card, you know, if you have it around that 42 IRE on this bar right here, you know that you are properly exposed. But the waveform, what's different from the waveform compared to the histogram is that you're going to be able to see each part of your image on this waveform. So this is a very dark image that I have on here, so everything's really low. But if you're in a high dynamic range, let's say a sky, you're going to be able to kind of measure where your sky is, and then maybe you have some buildings that are creating a lot of shadows. You'll be able to see where those shadows are here on your waveform. So, you know, there's some solid lines here. As long as you're within those solid lines on those different parts of your image, you're going to be ready to go on that scene. and you're going to be exposed properly. The waveform is going to give you the best readout on your exposure. Now here's something that you definitely want to make sure that you have turned on, and this is the red frame indicator for recording. You have the option to turn it off, turn it on, make sure it's always on. And what this is going to do is every time you hit the record button, it is going to put a red box around your screen telling you that you are definitely recording. If you are coming from the GH7, you only have like a little red dot that shows up on your screen, and sometimes that is hard to see. I've had it where I've missed that. I thought I hit record. It wasn't actually recording. But with this red record frame indicator, it's going to put that whole red box around your frame, and with that you know that you are definitely recording when you're supposed to be recording. So that is how I set up the GH7 for the most cinematic video experience using this camera. And with those settings, you know you're ready to roll the next time you show up for your video shoot. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments and we get a conversation started down there. But in the meantime, I would love for you to stick around on the channel. YouTube is recommending a video for you right here. Make sure you go check that out, and I'll see you over there.